Okay, so the thing with MLA formatting, or formatting in general, is that there are a million different rules. To do it correctly demands that you follow every rule and that the rules are constantly changing. It is not in your best interest to ever try to memorize MLA format, in-text citation, or things of that sort. What you want to be able to do is learn how to find this information, treat this information as instructions, and then you need to be very precise in terms of how accurately you follow these instructions. It's going to work one of two ways. Either your professor is going to say, hey, I want this in MLA format, in which case you need to be able to figure out what MLA format is and follow those instructions precisely. Or the instructor is going to say something to the effect of, I want you to do this thing my way. So I would like for you to cite sources the way I'm telling you to cite sources, in which case you need to ignore MLA format and follow your professor's instructions however they want things cited. Very rarely will you be, or very few of you will ever be able to be asked, very few of you will ever be asked to use MLA format professionally in life. MLA format, APA format is something for professional researchers. So if you become a researcher, this is going to be your whole life. If you are not a researcher, this takes a place in your life when you are in academics. And then once you get out of academics, this goes away. Long way of saying, learn how to follow instructions precisely and you'll be fine. So in-text citations. The point of in-text citations is to allow somebody who's reading your paper to be directed to your works cited page, and then they can use your works cited page to be able to access your source material. Whenever you cite something, or whenever you quote something, or whenever you paraphrase something in your text, you need to give your reader information about where that came from. So in-text citations allow that to happen. So if I was reading Linden's essay and I saw that Linden quoted somebody, I would be able to see Linden's in-text citation, go to Linden's works cited page. Using the information on Linden's works cited page, I should be able to access that document. And then if I wanted to, I could read that document and see if Linden is accurately using that information or that quote. It allows me to double check stuff. So 99% of the time, you will have this, okay? Author's last name and page number. Now, author's last name and page number, if you have it, you're going to use it. And you're going to use it generally in one of three ways. This is where you need to start paying attention, where you need to start taking some notes. If you use the author's last name in the sentence leading up to the quote, your in-text citation is only the page number. So you'll notice here, it says, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, end quote, parentheses, page number that quote came on, parentheses, period. And I'm only using the page number because I use the author's name up here, Wordsworth. If you can't read this, this is going to be available online. This video is going to be available online. So if you have questions or you forget something, that is where you can find this information. Wait till I get to the end of this, Bemis, and then I'll answer your question. If you do not use the author's name in a sentence, okay, so up here I said Wordsworth stated, down here, romantic poetry is characterized by the, quote, spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, end quote. Now I need to go parenthesis, author's last name, page number, parentheses, period. So if you use the name in the text, just page number. No name in text, name and page number. If you paraphrase something, you still need to follow the rules above. So here I'm paraphrasing Wordsworth's idea. Wordsworth extensively explored the role of emotion in the creative process. Now, since I use the guy's name up here, what do I need to have in my in-text citation? Just parenthesis, or just page number, right? Let's say that I did not use the guy's name up here. I just said poetry is characterized by powerful feelings. That's me paraphrasing Wordsworth. Well, what I need to put at the end of my sentence? Last name and page number, right? So you're writing summaries right now. Your summaries are quoting or paraphrasing quite a bit, right? Each one of those quotes or paraphrase needs to be accompanied by an appropriate in-text citation. If you use the last name, then just page number. If no last name is used, then in the in-text citation, you go author's last name and page number. Bemis.
Is it author's last name or author's name in general?
Author's last name.
Okay.
Yep, author's last name. So this takes care of, I think, 100% of what you have to do for this essay. Did I ask you to read any stories that have multiple authors, or is everything just one?
Just one.
Okay, so the big takeaway is you need to make sure that whenever you paraphrase or quote, it's author's last name and page number. Now, I'm going to go through some other situations as well. You want to take note of these other situations because they are going to come into play for the last paper that you will write. Bemis?
So is it the page number of the 50 essays book, right?
Right.
Even though their works are in here, it's not theirs.
It's the page number of the book.
Okay.
Yep. So even though the article is like 2 pages long and it's on page 99 through 100, it's page 99 or it's page 100. Because again, the point of this allows me to, I'm going to go to your works cited page. I'm going to see that you quoted this article that appeared in that book. So if I were to gain access to that book, I would want the appropriate page number. Does that make sense? All right. If you have 2 authors, same rules, except you would put the word "and" in between the author's last names, and the author's last names need to be arranged alphabetically. So, Mr. Brown, if I were to use the author's last names in the sentence, what do I need to include in my in-text citation? No, I use the author's last name in a sentence. So my in-text citation just needs to have, if I use the author's last names in a sentence, my in-text citation back here just needs to have the page number. Mr. Sint, if I don't use the author's last names, then what needs to be in my in-text citation? Their names alphabetically and page number.
Oh, and yeah.
And what do I use to separate those last names? The word "and." Okay. If you have more than 2 authors, this is where things are a little tricky. Make sure you jot this down. You use the phrase "et al." Okay. So if you have 3 or more, okay, it would be Frank, and then instead of listing everybody's name, I just use ETAL. That's true in the sentence or in the in-text citation. So here, according to Frank et al., since I have that in my sentence, what's going to go in my citation? Just the page number. If I don't use anybody's name in the sentence, then I need to use that Frank et al. In my in-text citation. You'll notice it's lowercase e, lowercase t, space, lowercase a, lowercase l, and then there's a period. So it's et al. Period, comma, or whatever. Et al. Period in here. So that period follows the AL no matter where you put it. Bemis?
So the author's last name that presents itself first in alphabetical order.
Right.
Okay.
So you would assume that everyone else's last name comes after the F. Yeah, FR. If you have 2 different sources in the same sentence, you separate those citations with semicolons at the end. So here I have a sentence that has quotes from 2 separate sources. So I go parentheses, source 1, semicolon, source 2, and then a period. Now these just happen to be alphabetical. It doesn't matter alpha order in here. It's just whatever quote came first, that's your first one. The quote that came second, that's your second one. What do you suppose you would do if you had a third quote? Let's say I had a third quote in here and that quote was written by Anderson. How would my thing change? McGurran?
Put a semicolon after 21.
So semicolon after 21, then what do I put? And then her page number, right? Now, let's pretend like I used a name up here. Let's say that Dewey's name appeared up here. Some argue that the capitalist society is no longer sustainable in the face of global crisis. But Dewey asserts that inventions spurred by capitalism are the only thing that can save thing in a time of need. What's going to change in here? How is this going to look? So I used Dewey's name in my sentence. So my in-text citation would be parentheses, Burke 3, right? Semicolon. And then what am I going to put down? Just the number. Why just the number, Mr. Sin? Because I use the name in the sentence. Crush. Multiple works by the same author. You want to put the titles in italics or underline based on how substantial the work is. Okay. So if you are reading something that is an article, like what you've read in there, you use quotation marks in that title. If you're using something that is a book, then you would underline or italicize the book. That underlining and italicizing is something that the MLA is constantly changing. There used to be 1,000 different things. I think generally now it's just italicize. You just italicize everything. But you use titles to differentiate between your sources. If you didn't use the author's name in the sentence, but they have multiple sources, you would go author's last name, comma, title, in quotes or parentheses, whatever, and then page number. That's a tricky one. Okay, so this is if I have multiple works by the same author. So this Elkins guy wrote a bunch of stuff. It'd be like that first essay, or not that first essay, when we listened to all that Gladwell stuff, right? And we wrote that little summary of what's going on with Carlos Doesn't Remember, and what was the other one? Food Fight. Okay, so those both were by Gladwell, right? Okay, you quoted them both in the same essay. So you would go Gladwell, comma, if it was a quote from Carlos Doesn't Remember. Carlos Doesn't Remember, and then page number. Or Gladwell, comma, and then Food Fight. Does that make sense? You're using two works by the same guy or girl. If they have the same last name, use the first initial. And then what you guys are doing. What about you have an article from an anthology? The author page citation works in an anthology, article, or collection. So when you cite a work that appears inside a larger source, what you guys are doing, who's the editor of your book? It's on the front.
Samuel Cohen.
Okay, so when you're quoting, do you quote Cohen? No, you quote the name of the person who wrote the thing inside of the thing. So your in-text citation would be whatever the author is of the story. You'd save this Cohen business for your works cited page. Forgot one. Now, this happens once a blue moon, but it always happens. What happens when your source quotes another source? So you're using a quote from an article that is quoting somebody. Here, Ravitch argues that high schools are pressured to act as social service centers, and they don't do that well. So here's a guy who said this quote, and this quote appeared in this guy's article. So here we'd have quoted in author and then page number. Now let's pretend like I didn't use Ravitch. I just said high schools are pressured to act as social service centers, and they don't do that well. Now what changes in my citation?
You put Ravitch in there?
No, weirdly, it just goes back to what's normal. You'd get rid of this quote. You would just get rid of the quoted in. Okay. I don't know exactly what's happening. You would just get rid of quoted in, because now, again, the point of an in-text citation is so that I can find this in its source, original source. So the only thing I need to do that is to go to Weissman. Here, if I say Ravitch argues and then I just put a page number, who does that make it sound like wrote that article? If I said Ravitch argues blah, 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 and I just put a page number at the end,
It sounds like Ravitch.
sounds like Ravitch wrote it. But Ravitch didn't write it. Weissman wrote it. That's why I need to get this quoted in Weissman. If I have no Ravitch up here and I have Weissman down here at the bottom, would somebody be able to find that quote from my source with that information? Yeah, they would, because I'd see Weissman. Okay, I could go to Weissman. I go to page 259, and then I'll see that Ravitch quote in there. And so I don't need to have that quoted in. If you don't have an author, you use title. You want to abbreviate the title, but abbreviate it in a way that does not impact its alphabetical order in your works cited page. So here, the article is The Impact of Global Warming in North America. That's been shortened to Impact of Global Warming. That make sense? The internet, we'll go about that when it's internet time. We already talked about that. And that's that for in-text citations. Does anybody have any questions further about in-text citations? All right. Now let's talk about your works cited page / annotated bibliography. Okay, so everything that we just went over, that's going to be something that I'm looking for when I'm going through your annotations to make sure that you are citing your source properly in your annotations. So do you have author's last name or page number? Do you have the parentheses and the period in the right spot? In the future, do you have et al? Do you have multiple sources? All that sort of jib-jab. Now, your works cited page. You need to begin your works cited page on a separate page at the end of your research paper. Every time you see the word works cited page, you can also superimpose annotated bibliography. Since you don't have a research paper, you don't have to worry about it. You just have your annotated bibliography. It should have 1-inch margins, last name, page number, header, just like the rest of your page number paper. So here, if Bemis is writing something, he'll have a header that says Bemis 1. Label the works cited or annotated bibliography. Do not italicize the words or put them in quotation marks. And center the words at the top of the page. Only the title should be centered. The citation entries themselves will be aligned on the left margins. Again, you can see an example of this on the assignment sheet that I handed out last week. Everything is double spaced. Do not skip spaces between entries. So what that means is that oftentimes, say I have annotated bibliography. Okay, now, how many spaces should there be between annotated bibliography and my first citation? So how many spaces between here and here? Double space all citations. Do not skip spaces between entries. 2. So I'm going to have double space here. Now, my citation goes on to a second line. How many spaces are going to be here? Not a trick question. 2, right? Okay, now I start writing my annotation. How many spaces here?
2.
How many spaces here?
2.
I continue writing my annotation. How many spaces here?
2.
Okay, now I get to my citation. Citation number 2. How many spaces here?
2.
My citation continues. How many spaces here? 2. It's 2 the whole way. Guarantee you, one of you is going to do this. I'm going to say, come on. You're going to want to put 4 here. That's not what you do. It's double spaced the whole way through. There's no extra spaces. Everything has the same spacing. Make sense? Do you hear me? Okay. Indent the second and subsequent lines of citations by 1/2 inch to create a hanging indent. That's this right here. So my citation, when it comes onto the second line, has to get indented, and this is 1/2 inch. Now, am I going to be sitting there with a ruler to make sure that you have a 1/2 inch? I am not. You just want to make sure that this is consistent. Okay, so wherever your second indent is, you just make sure that that's the same the whole way through, and you're fine. Make sense? Let's see what else is on here. All right, this is fun and stupid at the same time. Page numbers, you want to list them efficiently. That means that you don't repeat any number. So I'm writing my citation. Bemis, Ridley, he wrote something. That's cool, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now, in my anthology, the thing that Bemis wrote was on page 250 to 254. Okay, now what numbers are repeated here in this number set? The number 2 is repeated, right? And the number 5 is repeated. So to do this efficiently, that means you don't use 2 and 5 here. So when I get to my page numbers, I'm going to go 250 through 4. Does that make sense? What would it look like if I had page 250 to 264? How would that look? The first number would be what? 250. And what would my second number be? 64, right? Because the 2 is the only thing that's repeating. Okay, so when you're using page numbers, you repeat or you eliminate repeated digits, and then you use PP. If the excerpt spans multiple pages, use PP. And everybody has something that's using multiple pages. So when it gets to page numbers in your annotated bibliography, you use PP. Do you use PP, or did you see any PPs in your in-text citations? No. This is only for your annotated bibliography, your citation. Your in-text citation just has the number. If you only have one page, you just use P. Don't ask me why. That's the MLA for you. You'll notice it's PP dot, P dot. If you're citing something that was originally blah, 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 we'll talk about online stuff. All right. Capitalization, you capitalize each word in the title, but you don't capitalize articles. So words like the and an. You don't capitalize prepositions. You don't capitalize conjunctions unless it's the first word. So here you can see the title is Gone with the Wind. With is lowercase, the is lowercase. G is capitalized, W is capitalized. Oh, but hey, in this one, the T is capitalized in the. How can that be? Because it's the first word in my title. Use italics for titles of larger works, so books or magazines, and quotation marks for shorter works. Everybody here has an article that's located in an anthology. Is that a longer work or a shorter work? It's an article inside an anthology. That's a shorter work. So that means all of your titles should be what? Quotation marks. Now, if you were citing that whole book, then would the title of that book, 50 Model Essays, is that going to be italicized or quotation marks? Italicized, right? Because that's a big work. When you're citing an article inside an anthology, that's quotations. All of you are citing a work in an anthology. So this is important. You have an essay inside of an anthology. So you will go author of the essay, last name, comma, author of the essay, first name, period. Quotation marks, title of the essay, period. Quotation marks. Then title of the collection. What is the title of your collection?
50 essays.
50 Model Essays, comma, edited by, lowercase, your editor's name. That's located on the bottom of the title there. What's it? Samuel Cohen? Is that right? Yeah. Comma, publisher. That's usually something like Bedford St. Martin's, Penguin, Random House. Comma, the year it was published. Oftentimes you'll open it up and there's going to be 7 years listed. It'll be like 2004, 2006, 2009, 2011. Those years signify the years that that book was published. So if you have multiple years listed, how do you know which year is your year? Think about that logically for a second. So if this is my list. There you'll see, so I have 3 years listed. That means that they printed that book this year, and this year. that make sense? Follow me so far? How do I know which year is the year that my actual book was printed? Most recent one. Yep. So whatever the most recent one, that's the year that you were published. Don't ask me why they do it that way. They just do it. So that's your year, and then comma, page range of entry. If it's just one page, what are you going to put right here? P dot in the page. If you have multiple pages, what are you going to do right here? PP dot and then the page range. So you can see an example down here. Author's last name and first name, Harris Muriel. Title of the bigger work, edited by this person or company printed it. It was published in 2011, PP dot, and then the page range. And that's how you create your citation for your annotated bibliography. Any questions about that?
So is the works cited and the annotated bibliography, are these going to be on like separate pages?
No, your works cited and annotated bibliography mean the same thing right now.
Okay.
An annotated bibliography is a works cited page with annotations. So summaries of what the article is about. A works cited page would be just citations, no annotations.
So are the citations going above our annotations?
Yes, it'll go citation, annotation, citation, annotation, citation, annotation.
Okay.
Citation 1, annotation 1, citation 2, annotation 2, citation 3, annotation. Any other questions? Tomorrow is going to be a work day. Hold up a finger for how many annotations you've created. This is 5. This is fixing on being due on Thursday. So tomorrow is a work day. Wednesday would be a rough draft day, and then Thursday would be when you hand it in. We'll kind of see what things are looking like. At the max, we'll push it back one day if we need to. I do not plan on pushing it back one day, but that's maybe a thing. So if you only have one, the more you can have done by Wednesday, the merrier. Sound good? All right.
Could you read mine real quick?
Let me finish
Okay.
the Google Classroom post and then yes.